Good morning. おはようございます。やっぱ日本語の方が反応いいですね。Good morning, Pythonistas. Good morning. Morning. はい。I'm Takanori Suzuki. I'm a chair of PyCon JP. Now we start conference day of PyCon JP 2016. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks all for coming. Okay. At first, I will talk about participants. This year, we've sold 650 over tickets. I appreciate all participants gathered from all over the world. Thank you. I have a question. Who attended from overseas? Overseas. Thank you. Thanks. Applause. Next, I will talk about the motto. We selected everyone's different, all are wonderful as our motto. Please do talk to all the other wonderful participants around you, your neighbor or your, yes. Please conversation your other wonderful participants. And please enjoy the conference. And then I will introduce our sponsors. Diamond sponsor is Funza. Funza operates Ticket Camp. Ticket Camp is the #1 ticket reselling site in Japan. 拍手。Platinum sponsors are Monotaro and GandhiNet. Thank you. And we have 7 gold sponsors. Thank you. And we have so many silver sponsors and silver sponsors. And we have so many patron sponsors and patron sponsors. Thank you. Thanks to our sponsors, we are grateful for sponsor support. Then, Saito-san will introduce about events of the conference. Saito-san coming.
Thank you, Takanori Suzuki. Okay, I'm Daisuke Saito. I'm vice chair of PyCon JP. Okay. We'll let you all know about the schedule for all the events. Number 1, talk sessions. Today and tomorrow, we will have a total of 46 talks across 5 tracks. The talks will be held in room 201, floor 205, in this floor. Okay. Next, product fair. Okay. Today around lunchtime, we will have product fair where companies will introduce their developer-oriented products. There will also be a panel discussion about deep learning. Okay. This will happen in this here room, product fair. Okay. Next. Okay. We have open space we provide open space where you can have meetings and discussions. If you would like to use a space, please receive it on the whiteboard in front of reception desk. It's the first floor. Okay. Okay. Sorry. The open space in rooms A, B, and C up floor, one up floor, the on the third floor. Okay, next, beginner session. Today and tomorrow we will have a beginner session where beginners can learn to code or improve their skills. Okay. The beginner session will be held in room E, one up floor on the third floor. Okay. Okay. Next, lightning talks. After the talks today and tomorrow, we have time for lightning talk. Lightning talk, short 5 minutes presentation about any topic you are went. Okay. It doesn't have to be about Python, but it has to be under 5 minutes. Okay. If you would like to lightning talk, please write theme board in front of reception desk. Okay. The lightning talk will be held in this room. Okay. Okay. And this event hashtag. Please follow hashtag and please post tweets. Okay. And okay. If you have any question, please do not hesitate to ask a volunteer. You can identify volunteer by our beautiful T-shirts. Okay. 日本語で言うと、この T シャツ着てるのが、スタッフなので、何か困ったことあったら、声をかけてください。はい。Okay. Okay. With all this out of the way, let's get started with our first keynote. Okay. Okay. Our first keynote speaker will be Jessica McRae. 拍手。She is entrepreneur, software engineer, and open source developer from San Francisco. Okay. Okay. Let's get started. First keynote.
Good morning, everyone. So, can we get the slides projecting? Yeah. Great. So my name is Jessica McKellar. Am I mic'd? Is it? Oh, it's. You can hear it in the headphones. Yeah. You can hear it in the headphones. Yes. No. Perfect. Yes. How about now? Yeah. There we go. Great. My name is Jessica McKellar, and I am here today to talk about breaking the rules. I live in the United States, and I'm excited to be giving this talk here in Tokyo because while the content is inspired by my experience living in the United States, it is about an idea that I believe is universal. So I'm excited to share it with you, hear about your experiences, and learn from the diverse perspectives in this room. So a little bit of context. So quickly on me, thank you for the introduction. I have spent a lot of my adult life caring about the Python community. I'm a former director for the Python Software Foundation, which is the nonprofit and stewarding organization behind the language and community. For many years, for PyCon in North America, I have been the diversity chair. And then back when I was living in Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States, I was an organizer for the Boston Python user group, which grew to become the largest Python user group in the world while I was there. So I've spent a lot of time paying attention to the community. And then additionally, it's really important to me that Python continue to be a successful language because it's really the only one I know how to use. So I have used Python in every job that I have ever had. So first, I worked at a startup that had this technology for rebootless kernel updates on Linux, and we had a Python desktop client. Startup number 2 also used Python. We had a real-time group collaboration service that was built off of Django. And currently, I'm a director of engineering at Dropbox. And Dropbox might actually be the largest desktop deployment of Python in the world. So Dropbox, the desktop client, has been installed on 500 million machines, and that's all in Python. So Python is very important to me because I use it for work every day, and I need it to be a healthy ecosystem and community because it's what I love and what I know how to do. But I have a secret to share with all of you, which is that all of this time that I have spent on the language and on the community, it was never actually about Python. I still love all of you, but it was never about Python. What it was really about was about systems. And what I mean by that is that learning how to program, independent of the language, learning how to program is a profound experience because programming changes the way that you think about and debug and interact with the world. And that's a really important experience to have. When you learn how to program, you learn a set of rules, right? You become fluent in those rules. You become a systematic debugger within those rules. You work with other people to break down and solve problems, to build software, to build libraries, to change the language and the ecosystem to make it better. So you learn the rules, and then you learn that you can change your environment, that you can change the rules. So when you learn how to program, you have this opportunity to experience mastering a system that you know that you can change. And that's actually really interesting. I think we forget where that comes from sometimes. And really, if you want to walk all the way back to the beginning, the tenets of free software are what are giving us the explicit permission to do this. And when I say the tenets of free software, I think many of you in the audience are familiar with this, but to remind ourselves, free software says you can do whatever you want with a free software open source program. You can study how it works. You can look at the source code, study how it works. You can change it to make it do what you want, and you can redistribute your changes so other people can benefit. And this is, so Python is free and open source software, This ecosystem that we're all a part of is it was founded on these principles of free software. And so these tenets of free software are so baked into and integral to open source communities today that I think we sometimes take for granted what a powerful collective mindset this is. This idea, this expectation that we can make things better if we want to. And when we take it for granted, we can sometimes forget to challenge ourselves to carry this very powerful mindset into our lives outside of open source communities. So it's true that Python has rules, that programming has rules, but we know we can change those rules. But the truth is that a lot of things have rules that we can change, whether or not anybody tells us that's true. Almost everything is a system. Remember, this talk is actually about systems. Almost everything is a system with rules that you have the power to change. And in particular, almost anything that is important is really a system. Almost everything worth fighting for is a system, even if nobody told you the rules or that you could change them. So, there are certainly software systems. These are the ones we most tackle at conferences like this. But there are also hardware systems. And maybe the most important systems are people systems, right? Society systems. And my experiences with people systems are largely informed by growing up in the United States, but there are people systems everywhere. And this is why I teach people to program. Like, this is why I spend my time on communities like the Python community. This is why I invest so much of my time and my life into enabling other people to learn how to program inside and outside of the Python community. Because programming changes the way you think about and debug and interact with the world. And that is so important. So programmers master a system that they know that they can change. And once you realize that that's what's happening to your brain, once you've done it once, you hopefully realize that you can do it again. And we need as many people as possible on the planet who believe that about themselves and then do something with that power. So, anything worth fighting for has rules, but you can change the rules, whether or not someone gave you permission. And the reality is that very rarely do we have the luxury, the comfort of the explicit permission that free software gives us. Nobody is ever going to invite us to change the system. Nobody is ever going to tell us what the rules are. Nobody's going to tell us how to participate. Nobody is going to remind us that we have the power to debug the system and deconstruct it and tear it down and change it and make it better. So it's important that we don't forget that we have that power, that we have the confidence to use it, and that we don't forget to share it, and that we don't waste it. And that's pretty abstract. So how about an example? And this is definitely an example that is personal to me and somewhat personal to me coming from the US, but I think it will resonate with other examples in your life, hopefully. So, okay, an example. So there are these big, complicated systems, broken systems that I care about. I care about poverty. I care about democracy. I care about climate change. But I'm just a software engineer. Right? These systems aren't changed by people like me, are they? Right? They're changed by people with different skills. These are problems that are solved by politicians in governments. They're solved by people dedicating their lives to scientific research or to community organizing. So how do I fit into this narrative? Well, first, I reject that framing, actually. So first, we are not just software engineers. We're not just open source developers. The Python community was built from the ground up over decades by tens of thousands of people. People like the people running this conference, people like the people in this room, working together to build the software and the community around the software, making it inclusive, making it accessible, and making it a diverse and global community. But okay, so you want an example. This is me. This is me with a poll worker handbook for the 2016 California primary election. So let's take this timely example. And this is something that I personally care deeply about. This is democracy as an institution in the United States. Because there's some pretty freaky stuff going on right now where I live. So we're just software engineers. What could we possibly contribute to this? And, it's true, I don't have a law degree. I'm probably not going to become a Supreme Court justice. But many of us could. When I think about myself, my friends back at home, people in this room, many of us could, if we're serious about this, apply our software skills directly to the challenge of making democracy work. In the United States, this could look like joining institutions like the United States Digital Service or the technology teams in local governments. And in Japan or wherever country you're visiting this conference from, I'm sure there are analogous opportunities. So truly, many people in the Python community could utilize their community building expertise as well, driving democracy forward by serving in some type of public office. When I think about my Python friends in the United States, I know that most of us could participate in get out the vote campaigns, or be poll workers who run the election stations, ensuring that everyone is able to vote and have their vote count on election day. Most people at home and in this room have the privilege to put their time and their bodies in front of issues by protesting and amplifying the voices of people who aren't being heard. And certainly, I hope that everyone in this room and back at home who is eligible to vote wherever you may live does vote when voting opportunities arise. Because we are a part of the system. We are a part of a community, and we have the power to change that system and community in large and in small ways if we choose to spend our time doing it. So that's one example, and it's maybe a sober example, but I actually consider it empowering, not sobering. It's exciting that we have this power and that we have this mindset. We should just make sure we do something with it. And although my perspective is of that from someone from the United States, and what I'm passionate about might be different from what you're passionate about, there's certainly no shortage of important systems on this planet that need help. So, as you go through this conference this weekend, this week, I hope you learn something. I hope you meet interesting people and old friends. And with the rest of this great community, I hope that you talk about a system that is important to you and how you are going to be an active participant in it and change it if it needs changing. So, don't forget that you have this power. Have the confidence to use it. Don't forget to share it. And don't waste it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jessica. We will have a few minutes for questions and answers. If any of you have questions for Jessica. 同時通訳があるので、日本語で質問聞いても大丈夫ですので。はい。If you have a question, there should be people with mics there and somebody over here. So please line up.
I'm very friendly, I promise.
日本語で、ジェシカさんは何歳の時にプログラミングを始めましたか？教えてください。
Yeah, so I am not one of those people who learned how to program when they were very, very little. And I had a lot of friends who were like that. And this is actually a pretty important part of my experience and I think who I have become as a programmer. So I started learning how to program in college. And my first degree in university was not software engineering. My first degree is actually in chemistry. But while I was pursuing this chemistry degree, I had a lot of friends who were pursuing computer science degrees. And I would sort of watch them out of the corner of my eye, and I'd see what they were learning, and it seemed really useful. Like, it seemed like this really useful general toolkit full of tools for solving arbitrary problems in the world. And I wanted to have that experience too. So I took a couple of computer science classes, and I was immediately hooked and ended up getting a computer science degree and a computer science master's, and now this is what I do with my life, so it was a good investment. But the reason why I think this is important is because I felt like a beginner surrounded by experts when I started learning how to program in college, because most of my friends had been doing it for a very long time. And so I think this has instilled in me, like that experience instilled in me an empathy for beginners that has very much influenced how I think about community building in and outside the Python community.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much for your great presentation. My question is simple. What do you think is the most elegant system in the world? It's okay outside the software system or computer system, please.
On the spot. And there are probably many ways to answer this question. The fact that some of that sort of the basic laws of the universe can be expressed in like a small number of mathematical formulae is that there's a thing that appeals to my sort of science brain about that. That's really elegant and satisfying. A lot of systems are really important and not very elegant, but they're so important. I think that's what I can do on the spot. Yeah, thank you. Also, I'd rather have a system that works than one that doesn't work but is elegant. Yeah.
Hello, Jessica. Thanks for the talk. I'm from Malaysia, and I'm new. I think I'm still a beginner, I guess. I just started last year.
Awesome.
And my major is not computer science. I'm an engineer. So I just started programming recently into scientific computing and really passionate. Advice you have for me, for someone like me?
Sure. Well, I'm so glad that you're doing this. This is great. And actually, scientific computing is one of the areas where the Python community has really sort of led the broader open source community. And I'm really glad that this is a way that some people get into programming and get into Python. It depends a little on what skills you want to develop. I would say if you're talking about sort of developing your general software engineering skills, the single greatest thing for me has always been contributing to open source software projects. And I have to admit, I have these formal computer science degrees, but I learned so much more about what it's actually like to be a software engineer and to collaborate in a distributed environment on software projects through contributing to open source Python projects than I ever did in school. So that's what I would most strongly recommend. And a common follow-up question is like, how do I pick which projects to contribute to? The best projects are the ones that you use and you get value out of using. So giving back to projects that you already appreciate. I think if you don't have a strong candidate from that, projects that participate in programs like Google Summer of Code, to do that participation, they have to demonstrate that they're good at supporting beginners on the project, and so those projects tend to be exceptionally good for first-time contributors as well. Yeah, cool.
Thanks for your nice presentation. I agree with you, and I really like your talks. But my question is, I sometimes contribute to a big open source project, for example, Django and so on. But that progress is so long and sometimes boring, and waiting code assign and changes and explain what should I do and so on. So what do you do when you wait review for someone's review, or how maintain your motivation to contribute to continually?
Yeah, this is a great question. And it's really, my answer is mostly, it's not about you, it's about the way that we think about maintaining open source projects for a long time. Because I think we have this tendency to, it's like, there are things that have the most important, that have the greatest impact. Like there's a small number of things that projects could do that would have the greatest impact on them. And we're not always very good at focusing on those most impactful initiatives. And in particular, with maintaining open source projects, we tend to not spend enough time on onboarding potential new contributors and ensuring that they have a really positive experience contributing so that they'll come back and keep contributing. So things like ensuring timely reviews and like incentivizing that the existing community members promptly review other people's patches would be a really important part of that. So like clear onboarding instructions, like a fast feedback loop with in particular new contributors. We should prioritize that more than, getting any specific patch merged, working on, that's much more important than people like debating if Python 3 is going to be successful, right? So that's my meta comment. So if there are people in this room who are maintainers of open source software projects, really think about prioritizing what that onboarding experience is for new contributors, because that's the only way you're going to get people staying, contributing to your projects. And as for how you specifically keep up the motivation, well, potentially you can help make these projects better on this front. If they have unclear documentation or suboptimal incentives for getting people to do prompt code reviews, maybe there's a way that you can help. Other than that, I don't know, what do you do when, well, we don't have to wait for our code to compile. What do other programming language people do when they have to wait for their code to compile? I have some other project that you work on instead. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
How can I be more humble as a programmer, especially in front of non-technical people?
This might get a little personal, but how are you not humble right now?
Oh no, it's a question for a friend.
Oh, okay, great. Well, maybe I can call back to the first question about sort of empathy for beginners or people who maybe have less domain experience. Actually, here's the greatest thing: go be a beginner in some other domain and feel what that's like, and that will change the way that you interact with less technical or non-technical folks on technical topics. So, like, just have that experience of being a fish out of water or being a beginner, and I bet that will give you a renewed empathy on this topic.
I find it difficult to stay focused on one or two projects. There are way too many projects that I want to contribute and things that matter to me. How do you stay focused, or what do you think?
Yeah. Some of this depends on what you want to get out of these projects. So maybe my most basic answer is do whatever makes you happiest about how you distribute your time. The way that I tend to think about this for myself is where am I having the most impact, and focusing my time on where the impact is. So having some not formula, but having some way of thinking about what the relative impact of these projects is.
Thank you for the presentation. I was kind of wondering, since you've been saying that you started programming in college, and I imagine there was a bit of is it imposter complex or something? That feeling of everybody else is so much better and all that. But how? Firstly, I don't even know. Did you feel that, and how did you kind of how did you get over that to be like, well, even if I have this feeling, like I'm still going to go out and start all these meetups and end up becoming director of the PSF and all that stuff.
Yeah. So the question, the first part of the question was, did you experience this thing called imposter syndrome, which is it's a real phenomenon. It's very well studied and documented, and it's this feeling that you are an imposter, that you don't fit in, you don't belong, or in particular that maybe you're not qualified or not as good as the people around you in a community. So this is and I'm like staring at my husband who's in the audience, and we started dating while I was in college, and he had to put up with my imposter syndrome issues while I was learning how to program. So this is a very real thing for me. And so actually, a really important milestone for me was learning about this as a concept. So there's a book, it's getting a little dated at this point, but there's a book called Unlocking the Clubhouse, which is a series of longitudinal studies about a computer science program at a university in the United States. And it uncovers, it in particular is sort of investigating some of the gender dynamics in these programs. And one of the things that it spends a lot of time talking about is imposter syndrome, and in particular how women experienced imposter syndrome at this university. And I had never heard of this before, and I was reading this book, and it almost brought me to tears. I was like, I'm reading about myself in this book. But that was really powerful, and actually the studies show that once you know that this is a thing, if you develop some techniques for how to combat it, it makes it go away. So like step one is being aware of it, which is why it's important that I think increasingly in open source communities, this is a thing we help raise awareness on. And then, really for me, it was like building up a series of data points on being successful in various initiatives related to computing. And when I was doubting myself, just like really explicitly taking a moment to step back and remember those prior data points. And it's like eventually you accumulate enough data points that I'm probably supposed to be here, like it's probably not a mistake, but just really explicitly reflecting on those data points in moments of doubt was really important. And also having people that I could talk to about this, like having communities with people who are in a similar situation that I could talk to. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello. So you said building up a series of data points of success. Mm-hmm. So I just want to ask, how do you define that success? Because my experience with programming is always like doing something and then it never really finishes before I move on. And then sometimes I really lack this feeling of success because I'm always half finishing something and then working on something new. And it's very hard to say, okay, I was done with that. Mm-hmm. That's a success. So yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of what programming is like trying to solve a problem in code, and then like you write the code and it doesn't work, and then you have to keep debugging it to try to make it work. And there's like a negative feedback cycle there that's a little bit painful sometimes. Well, some of this depends on what is important to you and what success means to you. Like examples of this for me included, like, I mean, they range from like getting an A in my first grad level CS class to that first startup that I worked at, K-Splice, where we used Python. You know, this was a startup started by some friends of mine, and they, you know, tiny companies, tiny startups, the first couple of people that you hire are really important. Like, that you really make sure that those people count. And the fact that they wanted me to be a part of that startup was really validating for me that I had sort of gotten to where they were. So for me personally, it's tended to be less about completing specific projects and more about sort of the validation of the people around me. But it would depend on what it means for you. So I maybe define success in a healthy way, and like use that framing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I tend to define very much in terms of getting some code done.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Sure. Well, maybe if it's important to finish the projects, then finish them, or maybe it's not important, and then just recognize that.
Yes. Thanks.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Well then, thank you very much, Jessica.
Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of the conference.
同時通訳レシーバーなんですけど、席に置いたままにしておいてください。後でスタッフがピックアップするので、席の置いたままにしておいてください。